45. Iconic Black TV actresses, then and now, 2026. What if some of the most powerful women to ever grace American television were quietly written out of history? Long before hashtags and streaming deals, Black actresses carried entire decades of culture on their shoulders, shaping family rooms, dinner table conversations, and the way America saw Black womanhood. From the 1970s through the 1990s, these women didn't just entertain, they changed the rules. Today we're uncovering how time transformed the icons who once ruled our screens. If these faces shaped your memories, hit like, subscribe, and join Legends of Black Excellence, because their stories deserve to be remembered, debated, and celebrated. Black TV Trailblazers, 1970s. Diahann Carroll. Diahann Carroll entered American television as something rarely seen in the late 1960s, a Black woman portrayed with elegance, independence, and professional authority. When Julia premiered in 1968, Carroll became the first Black actress to headline a network sitcom playing a widowed nurse raising her son while working full-time. At a moment when most Black women on TV were written as domestic workers or side characters, her polished image challenged long-standing stereotypes and reached millions of households each week. That success, however, came with quiet tensions. Carroll later acknowledged the pressure of carrying representation on her shoulders, knowing that one role could shape how an entire community was perceived. She also faced criticism from both white executives who feared backlash and Black activists who felt her characters were too idealized. Was America ready to see Black excellence without struggle, always written into the script? That question followed her throughout her career. Rather than retreat, Carroll expanded her range. She earned a Tony Award, received multiple Emmy nominations, and delivered unforgettable dramatic turns in Dynasty and Roots: The Next Generations. By the time she stepped back from the spotlight, her impact was undeniable. Carroll didn't just open doors, she changed what was considered possible. Her legacy lives on in every Black actress who leads a series today without having to justify her presence. Cicely Tyson. Cicely Tyson emerged in the late 1960s and 1970s as one of the most powerful forces to ever redefine Black womanhood on American television. At a time when Black actresses were largely confined to narrow, subordinate roles, Tyson chose characters rooted in history struggle and moral authority. Her landmark performance in the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, 1974, transformed television drama, earning her 2 Emmy Awards and drawing an estimated 25 million viewers at its peak. Rather than portraying fantasy or escapism, Tyson embodied generational memory, women shaped by slavery, survival, and dignity. Her presence signaled that Black stories, when told truthfully, could command prime-time attention and national respect. That path, however, demanded sacrifice. Tyson famously rejected roles she felt degraded Black women, even when it meant turning down steady paychecks or fading from the spotlight. She endured long career gaps and industry resistance for refusing to compromise her principles. What does success really mean if it costs you your identity and values? That question defined her choices and separated her from her peers. The consequence was a legacy unmatched in integrity. Multiple Emmy wins, an honorary Academy Award, and continued relevance into her 80s with roles in Roots King and How to Get Away with Murder. Cicely Tyson didn't just open doors, she changed the rules of who was allowed to walk through them. Nichelle Nichols. Nichelle Nichols became a television pioneer in the late 1960s and early 1970s by doing something quietly revolutionary. She appeared on primetime TV as a Black woman who was intelligent, authoritative, and fully integrated into the future. As Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek 1966-1969, Nichols was not a maid, a comic sidekick, or a background extra. She was a communications officer aboard the USS Enterprise, speaking multiple languages and operating at the heart of command. In an era defined by civil unrest and limited representation, her image reached millions of American households each week, presenting Black excellence as normal, capable, and forward-looking. Yet her journey was not without tension. Nichols considered leaving the show after its first season, feeling her role lacked growth, until a conversation with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. changed her perspective. He urged her to stay, explaining that Uhura represented the future Black Americans were fighting for. How often does a single television role carry the weight of an entire movement's hope? Nichols stayed, and history followed. She later helped NASA recruit women and minority astronauts, directly influencing real-world change beyond television. The consequence of her choice is lasting. Nichelle Nichols didn't just imagine the future, she helped reshape who was allowed to belong in it. Esther Rolle. Esther Rolle became one of the defining faces of 1970s American television by representing Black motherhood with authority, discipline, and unmistakable realism. As Florida Evans on Maude and later Good Times 1974 to 1979, Rolle anchored stories of a working-class Black family struggling to survive in Chicago public housing. At a time when poverty was often caricatured or mocked, her performance brought gravity and respect to households that looked like millions of viewers owned. She wasn't glamorous or softened for comfort. She was firm, spiritual, and unafraid to speak hard truths, making her one of the most recognizable and trusted figures on television during the decade. That visibility also placed her at the center of controversy. Rolle openly challenged producers when she felt Good Times leaned too heavily into comedy at the expense of dignity, particularly objecting to storylines she believed reinforced harmful stereotypes. Her decision to temporarily leave the show in 1977 was a bold risk, especially for a Black actress in that era. How many performers are willing to walk away from success to protect their community's image? Though her absence altered the series' direction, her stance left a lasting impact. Esther Rolle's legacy is one of moral courage. She proved that representation wasn't just about being seen, but about being seen truthfully on one's own terms. Roxy Roker. Roxy Roker entered television history in the mid-1970s with a role that quietly challenged America's comfort zone. As Helen Willis on The Jeffersons, 1975 to 1985, she portrayed a confident, educated Black woman in an interracial marriage at a time when such relationships were still controversial for mainstream audiences. Her character was not written for shock value. Instead, Helen Willis was calm, articulate, and unapologetically herself. Week after week, Roker appeared in millions of living rooms, normalizing conversations about race, marriage, and identity during one of the most politically charged decades in modern U.S. history. Behind the scenes, that visibility came with pressure. Roker faced criticism from multiple sides. Some viewers resisted the idea of interracial marriage, while others questioned whether television was truly ready for such honesty. Yet she remained steady, refusing to soften her performance or retreat from the role's significance. What happens when representation challenges people more than it entertains them? The answer became her legacy. Roker stayed with the Jeffersons for nearly a decade, helping reshape what Black women could represent on network television. Long after the series ended, her impact endured not only as a TV pioneer, but as a cultural bridge builder, whose work expanded the boundaries of acceptance and realism on American screens. Marla Gibbs. Marla Gibbs became a 1970s television icon by turning sharp wit into cultural power. As Florence Johnston on The Jeffersons, 1975 and 1985, she delivered biting one-liners with impeccable timing, transforming a supporting role into one of the show's most memorable forces. Appearing in over 250 episodes, Gibbs helped anchor a sitcom that routinely ranked among the top-rated programs on American television, proving that Black women could command attention through intelligence and humor without softening their edge. Florence wasn't submissive or ornamental. She was quick, observant, and unafraid to speak truth, making Gibbs a fan favorite across racial and generational lines. That success didn't come without obstacles. Gibbs entered the series in her early 40s, an age when Hollywood often narrows opportunities for women, especially Black women. She had to fight the assumption that comedic roles lacked depth or longevity. Can laughter be a form of authority rather than a distraction from it? Gibbs answered by expanding her reach, earning 5 Emmy nominations, launching her own sitcom, 227 1985 to 1990, and later opening a jazz club to support Black artists. The result is a legacy built on versatility and endurance. Marla Gibbs didn't just steal scenes, she reshaped how comedic brilliance could translate into lasting influence on American television. Iconic Black sitcom queens. Jackie Harry. Jackie Harry became a defining face of 1980s family television by bringing bold personality and sharp comedic rhythm into America's living rooms. As Sandra Clark on 227 1985-1990, she played a confident, stylish, and outspoken Black woman whose presence instantly lifted every scene. At a time when many sitcoms still leaned on restraint, Jackie's fearless delivery felt fresh and electric. Her performance resonated with families gathered around the TV after dinner, making 227 a staple of weekday evenings and weekend reruns. In 1987, she made history as the first Black woman to win an Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series, a milestone that reflected both popularity and craft. That visibility also came with challenges. Jackie often risked being boxed into loud or exaggerated roles, a label that could limit long-term opportunities. Instead of pulling back, she leaned into control, choosing projects that allowed her humor to feel intentional rather than careless. Is it possible to be unforgettable without being misunderstood? Over time, she proved it was. Her later appearances on shows like Sister Sister and Everybody Hates Chris extended her reach to new generations. Jackie Harry's legacy rests in familiarity and fearlessness. She didn't just entertain families at dinner time, she gave them a character they never forgot. Debbie Morgan. Debbie Morgan became a familiar and trusted presence in American living rooms through daytime television, where family routines often included soap operas playing softly in the background. As Angie Baxter on All My Children, a role she originated in 1982, Morgan helped redefine how Black women were portrayed on daytime TV, intelligent, compassionate, and emotionally complex. Her performance resonated with viewers who followed Angie's life through love, marriage, motherhood, and professional growth, making the character feel like part of the extended family. In 1989, Morgan earned a Daytime Emmy Award, becoming the first Black actress to win Outstanding Supporting Actress in a drama series, a historic moment that reflected years of consistent, grounded work. Behind that success was a demanding reality. Soap operas required relentless schedules, emotional stamina, and long-term commitment, often with little public recognition outside loyal audiences. Morgan navigated shifting storylines, cast changes, and industry limitations placed on Black actresses in daytime drama. How do you stay authentic when your character's life unfolds in front of millions for decades? Her answer was endurance with integrity. Beyond All My Children, she appeared on Roots, The Next Generations, and later series like Power, proving her range extended far beyond one role. Debbie Morgan's legacy lives in longevity. She didn't chase spotlight moments. She built trust episode by episode, generation by generation. Lynn Whitfield. Lynn Whitfield emerged in the late 1970s and 1980s as a television presence defined by elegance, emotional intelligence, and quiet authority. While many viewers first encountered her in family-centered dramas and miniseries that aired during primetime evenings, Whitfield stood out for bringing cinematic depth to the small screen. Appearances in projects like Hill Street Blues and St. Elsewhere allowed her to enter American living rooms not as a stereotype, but as a fully realized Black woman navigating ambition, love, and consequence. Her refined screen image resonated with audiences who valued dignity and realism during an era when families often watched television together after dinner. That image, however, was carefully protected. Whitfield was selective, often turning down roles that felt shallow or repetitive, which slowed her rise in a fast-moving industry. Is patience a risk in Hollywood, or can it be a form of power? That question shaped her career. The turning point came with the Josephine Baker story, 1991, which earned her an Emmy Award, making her one of the few black actresses of her generation to receive such recognition for a leading television performance. The long-term impact of her choices is clear. Lynn Whitfield built a legacy rooted in grace and credibility, proving that lasting respect often matters more than constant visibility. Alfre Woodard. Alfre Woodard became a trusted presence in American living rooms during the late 1970s and 1980s by bringing intelligence, restraint, and emotional honesty to family-centered television. Unlike performers built on catchphrases, Woodard's strength came from nuance. Viewers encountered her in TV movies and series that families watched together, stories about relationships, responsibility, and moral consequence. Her performances felt grounded and believable, the kind that lingered after the TV was turned off. That credibility translated into recognition. By the end of the 1980s. She had already earned multiple Emmy Awards for television work, proving that subtlety could command just as much attention as spectacle. That path required discipline. Woodard avoided overexposure and resisted roles that leaned on exaggeration or easy humor, even when sitcom fame promised faster rewards. She understood that longevity depended on trust, not noise. How do you remain familiar to audiences without becoming predictable? Her answer was range. She moved fluidly between family dramas, prestige TV films, and later crossover roles that introduced her to new generations. The result is a legacy built on consistency and respect. Alfre Woodard didn't define family television by volume or flash. She shaped it by reminding viewers that truth, empathy, and quiet strength are what keep stories alive across decades. Thelma Hopkins. Thelma Hopkins became a familiar, comforting presence in American living rooms during the late 1970s and 1980s, a time when television often served as the backdrop to family dinners and shared evenings. Audiences first embraced her on What's Happening, 1976 to 1979, where her warmth and natural humor made her feel like someone you actually knew. Later, as Aunt Rachel on Family Matters, 1989 to 1998, Hopkins helped anchor one of the most successful black family sitcoms of its era, a show that spent 9 seasons on network television and reached millions through syndication. Her characters reflected everyday black family life, loving, flawed, resilient, and that familiarity is why viewers welcomed her into their homes week after week. Behind that steady success was a series of transitions that required reinvention. Hopkins had to move from youthful sitcom roles into mature family figures without losing relevance, a shift many performers struggle to survive. How do you grow with your audience without being left behind by changing trends? She answered by embracing versatility, balancing acting with a respected music career as a member of Tony Orlando and Dawn before returning fully to television. The result is a legacy built on consistency rather than spectacle. Thelma Hopkins didn't chase headlines. She became part of the rhythm of family life, leaving behind performances that still feel familiar decades later. Kim Fields. Kim Fields became a fixture of American family television by growing up in front of the audience rather than arriving fully formed. As Tootie Ramsey on The Facts of Life, 1979 to 1988, she entered millions of living rooms during after-school hours and dinnertime reruns, portraying a young black girl navigating friendship, confidence, and adolescence. Fields' performance felt natural and relatable, helping the series run for 9 seasons and become one of NBC's most enduring sitcoms of the era. For many families, watching Kim Fields was like watching a niece or daughter mature on screen. Her presence anchored the show's warmth and made it safe, familiar viewing across generations. That early visibility also created a crossroads. Child stardom can freeze an image in time, and Fields faced the challenge of being taken seriously as an adult performer. Instead of chasing non-stop exposure, she stepped back to focus on education, earning a college degree before returning to television. How many young stars have the discipline to pause fame in order to protect their future? The decision paid off. Fields later found success on Living Single 1993-1998 and behind the camera as a director and producer. Her legacy isn't just about nostalgia, it's about longevity. Kim Fields proved that growing up on TV didn't have to mean burning out on it. Black TV drama and soap legends. Victoria Rowell. Victoria Rowell became one of the most powerful figures in daytime television during the 1990s by bringing intensity, elegance, and emotional range to soap opera storytelling. As Drusilla Winters on The Young and the Restless, 1990-2007, she helped redefine what a black female character could be on daytime TV, bold, ambitious, unpredictable, and central to the show's biggest storylines. At its peak, The Young and the Restless regularly drew 8-10 million daily viewers, making Rowell a constant presence in American homes during lunch hours and afternoon routines. Drusilla wasn't written to be safe or secondary. She drove drama-shaped rivalries and commanded attention in a genre built on long-form emotional investment. That prominence, however, came with conflict beyond the screen. Rowell later spoke openly about creative disagreements and systemic limitations faced by black actors in daytime television tensions that ultimately led to her departure. Walking away from a top-rated soap was a serious risk. What do you do when success comes with silence you're no longer willing to accept? The aftermath reshaped her legacy. Rowell expanded into writing, advocacy, and philanthropy, founding organizations to support foster children and the arts. Though her soap career ended abruptly, her impact did not fade. Victoria Rowell stands as a reminder that dominating daytime TV is one achievement, but challenging the system behind it can define a legacy even more powerfully. Christophe St. John. Christophe St. John became one of the most recognizable and emotionally compelling figures in daytime television through his long-running role as Neil Winters on The Young and the Restless. Joining the series in 1991, he quickly emerged as a cornerstone of the show's dramatic engine, portraying a successful black businessman navigating love, power, addiction, and family over nearly 3 decades. At a time when soap operas rarely centered black male characters with sustained depth, St. John's presence helped broaden the genre's emotional and cultural scope. His performance earned him 2 Daytime Emmy Awards, and during the show's peak years when viewership often exceeded 8 million daily viewers, Neil Winters felt like a permanent fixture in American households. Behind that success, however, was a far more complicated reality. St. John faced deeply personal struggles, including mental health challenges and profound family loss, which gradually intersected with his public life. Despite professional acclaim, he battled periods of instability that eventually led to his departure from the series. How much of an actor's pain is invisible when the cameras keep rolling? His passing in 2019 at age 52 marked a tragic end to a career that had shaped daytime television history. Today, Christophe St. John's legacy endures not only through reruns and awards, but through the lasting impact of a character who proved that long-form drama could give black men complexity, vulnerability, and lasting centrality on American TV. Phylicia Rashad. Phylicia Rashad became one of the most influential faces of American television by embodying intelligence, grace, and authority at a time when such portrayals of black women were still rare. As Claire Huxtable on The Cosby Show 1984-1992, she helped anchor the #1 rated series in America for 5 consecutive seasons, reaching tens of millions of viewers weekly. Rashad's portrayal of a lawyer wife and mother wasn't built on gimmicks or stereotypes. It was grounded, aspirational, and deeply human. In living rooms across the country, she redefined what success and stability looked like for black families, making her character both admired and trusted during an era when primetime TV shaped national conversation. That visibility also brought pressure. Rashad faced the challenge of being forever associated with a single iconic role while navigating an industry that often struggled to see black actresses beyond familiar images. How do you evolve when the audience already thinks they know who you are, rather than chase repetition? She shifted toward theater and dramatic television work, earning a Tony Award and later acclaim in projects like This Is Us. The result is a legacy that extends beyond ratings. Phylicia Rashad didn't just dominate an era of television, she set a standard for dignity and depth that continues to influence how Black women are written and seen on screen today. Pam Grier. Pam Grier became a powerful force in long-form television drama by bringing authority, experience, and undeniable presence to roles that demanded more than surface-level strength. While she first rose to fame in the 1970s as a film icon, her transition into television allowed her to dominate mature drama spaces where character history mattered. Appearances on series such as Miami Vice, Crime Story, The L Word, and later Law and Order positioned Grier as a commanding figure, women shaped by hard choices, survival, and resilience. For audiences watching serialized drama week after week, she represented a different kind of power, lived in, seasoned, and uncompromising. That evolution was not automatic. Grier faced a difficult pivot as Hollywood attempted to confine her to a single era or image. She also battled serious health challenges, including cervical cancer in the late 1980s, which forced her to step away and rebuild both personally and professionally. What happens when a cultural symbol has to reinvent herself just to keep working? The answer became her legacy. By returning to television with depth rather than spectacle, Pam Grier expanded how Black women could age on screen with dignity and narrative weight. Her impact lies not only in breaking ground, but in proving that longevity in drama comes from truth, endurance, and the courage to evolve beyond expectation. Black TV royalty 1990s. Regina King. Regina King emerged in the early 1990s as one of the defining faces of Black television, shaping the tone, humor, and emotional honesty of an entire era. She first became a household name as Brenda Jenkins on 227, but it was her work in the 1990s, especially on Boys in the Hood Living Single, and later Southland, that positioned her as a cultural anchor. King represented a new kind of Black woman on TV, confident without apology, emotionally layered and grounded in real-life experiences familiar to Black audiences. Her performances felt contemporary and conversational, the kind families discussed after the episode ended, making her presence inseparable from 90s Black pop culture. That visibility came with growing expectations. King faced the challenge of avoiding typecasting at a time when many young Black actresses struggled to transition into mature roles. Instead of fading, she expanded her range through voice work on The Boondocks and increasingly complex dramatic roles. How many actors successfully grow with their audience without losing authenticity? King answered by evolving deliberately. The result is a legacy marked by longevity and respect, multiple Emmy Awards, a seamless move into directing and continued relevance decades later. Regina King didn't just reflect 1990s Black culture, she helped define its voice, its confidence, and its lasting influence on television. Tichina Arnold. Tichina Arnold became one of the most recognizable faces of 1990s Black television by mastering a rare, balanced, bold comedy rooted in real emotion. As Pam James on Martin, 1992-1997, Arnold helped shape one of the most influential Black sitcoms of the decade, a show that consistently ranked among the top-rated programs for young adult audiences and dominated syndication for years. Pam wasn't just the loud best friend she was, sharp, loyal, vulnerable, and unapologetically herself. Families watching in living rooms and college students crowding dorm TVs all recognized her as someone real, not polished for comfort, but honest in attitude and tone. Her comedic timing turned everyday frustrations into cultural catchpoints that still circulate today. That success, however, came with a risk. Arnold was so effective in comedy that Hollywood often struggled to see her beyond it. She faced the challenge of expanding her range without losing the identity audiences loved. How do you escape a role that made you famous without betraying the people who embraced you? Arnold answered by evolving on her own terms, transitioning into roles on Everybody Hates Chris and Survivor's Remorse, and later anchoring family-centered sitcoms like The Neighborhood. The result is a legacy built on adaptability. Tichina Arnold didn't just define 90s humor. She carried it forward, proving that authenticity can grow mature and still resonate decades later. Tisha Campbell. Tisha Campbell became one of the most influential faces of 1990s black television by blending warmth, wit, and emotional credibility into characters that felt unmistakably real. As Gina Waters on Martin, 1992 to 1997, she helped anchor a sitcom that dominated ratings among black households and became a defining voice of the decade. Gina wasn't just a love interest. She was ambitious, expressive, and unapologetically herself, reflecting the everyday realities of young black women, balancing relationships, careers, and self-respect. For many viewers, Campbell's performances felt like family, someone you laughed with, argued with, and rooted for every week. Behind the scenes, Campbell faced a pivotal turning point. After leaving Martin during its final season amid well-documented tensions, she risked being sidelined at the height of her visibility. What happens when protecting your dignity means walking away from the biggest platform you have? Rather than fading, she rebuilt her career through My Wife and Kids, 2001 to 2005, where she reached a new generation of families and reinforced her reputation as a dependable, emotionally grounded performer. Over time, Campbell's legacy became one of resilience and continuity. She didn't just help define 1990s black TV culture. She proved that growth, self-preservation, and long-term relevance can coexist in an industry that rarely rewards all three. Kelida Smith. Kelida Smith became a defining figure of late 1990s and early 2000s black television by anchoring family comedy with realism and authority. As Wanda McCullough on The Bernie Mac Show, 2001 to 2006, she portrayed a disciplined, loving, no-nonsense wife whose presence balanced chaos with structure. The series ran 5 seasons, earned multiple Emmy Awards, and reached millions through syndication, making Smith a familiar face in households that gathered around the TV after dinner. Her performance resonated because it felt lived in, smart, patient, and firm, reflecting the dynamics of real black families rather than sitcom exaggeration. That visibility also carried a challenge, sustaining momentum beyond a breakout role. Smith faced the risk of being defined by one character in an industry slow to expand opportunities for black women over 40. How do you remain essential when the spotlight moves on? She answered by diversifying, appearing in dramas like Z Nation in the Cut and guest arcs across network television, while maintaining a steady comedic voice. The result is a legacy built on dependability and range. Kelida Smith didn't chase trends. She embodied stability, proving that cultural influence often comes from consistency, not noise, and that family-centered storytelling can leave the deepest mark. Countess Vaughn. Countess Vaughn became a defining voice of 1990s black youth television by embodying humor, vulnerability, and relatability at a time when teen characters rarely felt this authentic. As Kim Parker on Moesha, 1996 to 2001, and later The Parkers, 1999 to 2004, Vaughn brought loud confidence and sharp comedic instincts into family living rooms across America. Her performances connected instantly with young viewers growing up during the era of after-school sitcoms and primetime UPN programming. Kim wasn't perfect or polished. She was expressive, flawed, and emotionally honest, which made her feel real to audiences navigating adolescence alongside her. That early success, however, came with complications. Vaughn struggled with being boxed into a single character type while also facing intense public scrutiny over her appearance and personal life. The transition from teen star to adult performer proved difficult in an industry that often limits second acts for young black actresses. How do you move forward when the audience refuses to let go of who you used to be? Despite setbacks, Vaughn continued working in television, theater, and music, maintaining a loyal fan base built on nostalgia and connection. Her legacy reflects a broader truth about 1990s black TV royalty. Visibility alone doesn't guarantee protection, but authenticity leaves a lasting imprint. Countess Vaughn remains remembered not just for laughs, but for representing a generation finding its voice on screen. Vanessa Williams. Vanessa Williams became one of the most influential figures of 1990s black television by redefining what crossover success could look like. After making history as the first Black Miss America in 1983, she rebuilt her career through talent and discipline, eventually becoming a familiar, respected presence on primetime TV. In the 1990s, roles on series like Melrose Place and later Soul Food positioned Williams as a symbol of sophistication, ambition, and modern black womanhood. She carried herself with polish, yet her characters were never distant, reflecting the evolving aspirations of black audiences who saw themselves navigating professional and personal worlds with similar complexity. That journey was shaped by an early public setback that could have ended everything. Williams faced intense scrutiny and rejection at a young age, forcing her to rebuild credibility in an industry that rarely offers second chances. How many careers survive when the fall happens before the foundation is fully built? Instead of retreating, she expanded, earning Grammy nominations as a recording artist, then returning to television with authority in Ugly Betty, where her performance earned 3 Emmy nominations. The long-term impact is unmistakable. Vanessa Williams didn't just reclaim her place, she elevated it, becoming proof that resilience, versatility, and control over one's narrative can turn controversy into a lasting legacy of excellence. Class, beauty, and prestige TV. Lynette McKee. Lynette McKee emerged in the 1970s as a rare symbol of black elegance on American television and film, carrying a quiet sophistication that set her apart from louder archetypes of the era. With her refined features, composed presence, and emotional restraint, McKee brought a sense of classical beauty to the screen that felt intentional and dignified. Audiences encountered her in projects such as Roots: The Next Generation's 1979, where she portrayed strength through subtlety rather than spectacle. In living rooms across America, her performances suggested that black women could be portrayed with grace, intellect, and inner calm, an image that resonated deeply with viewers who valued poise and maturity over exaggeration. That refined image also created limitations. McKee was often overlooked for mainstream roles that favored flashier personalities, and her career progressed more selectively than explosively. She chose not to chase visibility at the cost of identity, even when opportunities slowed. Is quiet excellence harder to sustain in an industry that rewards constant noise? Over time, her body of work gained retrospective respect. McKee continued acting steadily, appearing in film, television, and stage while maintaining her artistic integrity. Her legacy lies in representation without compromise. Lynette McKee didn't dominate television through volume or controversy. She defined a lane of black prestige and elegance that remains influential precisely because it was rare, controlled, and enduring. Lola Falana. Lola Falana emerged in the late 1960s and 1970s as one of the most visually striking symbols of black elegance ever to grace American television. With her statuesque beauty, commanding stage presence, and effortless glamour, Falana became a frequent guest on variety shows, primetime specials, and network television events, watched by families gathered in living rooms across the country. She wasn't framed as comic relief or background decoration, she was presented as a star. In an era when black women were rarely allowed to embody luxury and sensual sophistication on mainstream TV, Falana projected confidence, international appeal, and refinement that felt aspirational rather than provocative. That brilliance, however, was interrupted by a life-altering turning point. In the late 1980s, Falana was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a condition that forced her to step away from the spotlight at the height of her cultural recognition. Her public disappearance led to speculation, but the reality was far more profound. How do you redefine purpose when fame is no longer physically possible? Falana chose privacy, faith, and healing over visibility. Though she largely withdrew from entertainment, her legacy remains intact. Lola Falana represents a rare chapter in television history, proof that black beauty could be framed with dignity, power, and prestige, and that true elegance is defined not only by how one shines, but by how one endures when the spotlight fades. Cheryl Lee Ralph. Cheryl Lee Ralph emerged as a symbol of black elegance by combining classical training, vocal power, and quiet authority into every role she touched. Long before mainstream television fully embraced complex portrayals of black women, Ralph brought prestige to the screen through performances that felt educated, composed, and emotionally grounded. Many viewers first recognized her from her Broadway breakthrough in Dreamgirls 1981, but her television work throughout the 1980s and 1990s carried that same refinement into American living rooms. She projected intelligence and self-possession, representing a version of black womanhood rooted in confidence rather than stereotype, which resonated deeply with audiences who valued grace and substance. That path was not without resistance. Despite her credentials, Ralph spent years navigating an industry that often overlooked mature, poised black actresses in favor of trend-driven casting. She endured periods of limited opportunity even as her talent remained unquestioned. What happens when excellence is respected but not fully rewarded? Her answer was persistence. Ralph continued working across television, film, and stage, eventually reaching a career renaissance with Abbott Elementary, earning an Emmy Award decades after her debut. The impact of her journey is profound. Cheryl Lee Ralph didn't chase relevance, she sustained it. Her legacy stands as proof that elegance, discipline, and patience can outlast cycles of visibility, leaving an imprint far deeper than fleeting fame. Jennifer Lewis. Jennifer Lewis became a distinctive symbol of black elegance on television by pairing theatrical precision with emotional authority. Often introduced to audiences through guest roles and ensemble casts in the 1980s and 1990s, she carried herself with a regal presence that made even brief appearances feel essential. Lewis's voice posture and timing reflected classical training, allowing her to portray mothers, professionals, and community anchors with warmth and command. In family living rooms, her performances suggested stability and wisdom, characters who held stories together rather than chasing attention. This consistency laid the groundwork for her later recognition as a cultural staple. Behind that composure, Lewis faced long stretches without steady work, navigating an industry that frequently overlooked seasoned black actresses who didn't fit narrow expectations. She later spoke openly about personal struggles with mental health, reframing vulnerability as strength rather than liability. How often do audiences recognize the cost of always being strong on screen? Her perseverance paid off with renewed visibility in series like Blackish, where she reached a new generation while reinforcing her signature authority. The impact is lasting. Jennifer Lewis transformed supporting roles into statements of dignity, proving that elegance can be bold, resilient, and deeply human, and that longevity is built by staying true when trends move on. These women didn't simply appear on television. They reshaped how black womanhood was seen, respected, and remembered. From pioneers who broke racial barriers to sitcom queens who lived in our family rooms and drama powerhouses who carried stories for decades, their journeys prove that impact outlives ratings and youth. Some aged gracefully in the spotlight, others stepped back with dignity, but none were replaceable. As television continues to evolve, one question remains at the heart of their legacy. Were these black actresses given the long-term recognition they truly deserved, or did the industry move on too quickly once their era passed? The debate is yours.